What does this mean for the war in Ukraine, and what should we be prepared for next? Retired Vice-Admiral Mark Norman served as Vice Chief of the Defense Staff. He is with me now. Vice-Admiral Norman, pleasure to have you with us. Thank you for making the time.
Well, thanks, Vashi. And once again, unfortunately, we've got a really serious issue to discuss.
Very serious. And I wondered, I think there had been a lot of speculation and certainly comments already from U.S. President Trump where Ukraine is concerned. But this video takes it to a completely different level. When you watch those interactions, what went through your mind?
Well, I mean, first of all, it was just a colossal collapse of what would be in any way described as a diplomatic event. It made me sad, and it made me very concerned about what this means, not just for Ukraine, but for European security. And unfortunately, by extension, there are some potential lessons, I think, or observations that we need to take as Canadians watching this.
And I want to ask you what those observations are in a second, but just starting on Ukraine and what it does mean for Ukraine. I mean, essentially, what Donald Trump said in this video aligned himself even further with Vladimir Putin, the aggressor, in this case. In your view, what does that mean for Ukraine?
Yeah, well, I think if there was any doubt as to where he was on this issue, there's no longer that doubt. He's playing right into Putin's playbook. I think it puts Zelenskyy in as close to an untenable situation as he can be. We will have to wait to see what the European leadership do in response to this. My understanding is this weekend they are having conversations, and we'll see what the outcome of those is early in the week. But clearly, the United States has basically not only they fired a warning shot basically across Zelenskyy's bow, and it's not a good place. And Zelenskyy has got to decide what he's going to do domestically and what friends he still has remaining in the capitals of Europe.
The question that Europe and Canada this weekend is grappling with is, I think, twofold, right? Like, not only should we supplant whatever moral leadership or aid, concrete aid provided by the U.S. to Ukraine existed, but will they, is the secondary part of the question, right? And I wondered, from where you sit, if you think, the differences in where different European countries sit, or even Canada in some instances, like a video like this or an event like this is enough to shock them into coalescing.
Well, I think there is still a very strong underpinning of support for Ukraine. Yes, there always have been varying degrees of support, and there's never been unanimous consent, if I can describe it that way. But basically what we're observing, or what we did observe, is that the ultimate in coercion, bullying, and some have even gone as far as described this as, mafia-like behavior. And so I don't think the major capitals in Europe are going to respond positively to this. We saw both the leaders of France and the UK make visits. One was extremely deferential. The other was polite, respectful, but made it clear that Trump wasn't necessarily accurate. So I think there's enough support there, and I think that they will be unified in the sense that the problem is in their backyard. And ironically, this could in fact be the catalyst that Trump has been looking for. I don't give him credit for having choreographed this in the way that it played out, but this could in fact unify the European capitals to an extent that was underpinning the lecturing that they were given about 2 to 3 weeks ago.
You mentioned lessons for Canada. There are a lot of anxious Canadians right now on a couple of fronts. A, the prospect of tariffs in a few days, but B, of course, all those constant threats now of around our sovereignty. What are the lessons that you think exist?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've been concerned about this since it started, and it's less about the tariffs, although I don't want to diminish the significance of them. Those are simply tools that Trump is threatening to use. But ultimately, it comes back to coercion, bullying, and ultimately, he wants things from us. He wants concessions from us. And the challenge we're going to have is how much are we prepared to give in order to maintain some semblance of a civil relationship? Or are we prepared to dig deep and stand on sort of long-lasting principles that are important to Canada and push back? But we see what happens. And so it's not a black and white situation. And the lesson starts with we can't just react emotionally and basically push back saying, well, we don't like what you're saying. There is some fact to it, and we need to start from that basis.
Yeah, I think that the issue that a lot of Canadians have is, and I imagine you're speaking around, shortcomings when it comes to national security or spending on defense, a subject we've spoken about on many instances, and the criticism of Canada is not unique to this administration. I think that the problem that we come up against for Canadians is that when we listen to the president, it doesn't appear to be the case that even if we were to do all the things that would rectify that, it would, relieve us from whatever he wants to enact on us.
Yeah, and you're right. And it's a slippery slope. And we've already seen public statements from some of his own inner circle, the fact that, hey, look what Canada did when we pushed back on the border issue. If we push back on 4 or 5 other things, then we're going to get what we want. So the problem is we don't know what the desired end state here is. And therefore, it's hard to know what the potential concessions could be. And this is where it's really difficult. And we can't respond tactically one thing after another. We've got to be able to look at this and say, okay, how far are we prepared to go? How far are they prepared to go? And the most frightening scenario is not an invasion in a traditional sense. I don't believe that. And but we are looking at some sort of annexation. And what really disturbs me is the kind of language we're hearing out of Trump and his closest circle is similar to the kind of language that we were hearing out of Putin 3 years ago. And I'm not trying to be alarmist, but I'm really, really concerned that we don't have in our own minds a desired end state in terms of where we want to be. I think going back to the way things were is a non-starter. And so we need to know where it is that we can compromise and need to compromise with the Americans, and where it is that we're not prepared to compromise, and perhaps we have to take some short-term pain and look for other partners, be those economic partners or defensive security partners going forward.
I'm going to leave it on that note. Vice-Admiral Norman, thank you so much for your analysis today. Appreciate it.